All right, there we go. All right. So, class. Organisms within a population must compete for resources to survive. True or false? Remember, thumbs up if that's true, thumbs down if it's false. Terry, make sure you give me a thumbs up if it's true. Thumbs down if it's false. I don't know what a check mark means. Zachary, Ty, Samuel, Michael. If you don't remember how to give me feedback, you just click on your name in that attendee list, and you can submit feedback like that. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Charles, what's a check mark? Is that a thumbs up? All right, Ty, awesome, you found it. Zachary, what's a check mark? Awesome, Zachary. Yeah. Eric, Harley, how are you two doing? Samuel, Billy, Alexander, are you guys AFK? Are you just kind of have me on, not listening? What? Oh, the statement's right there. Can you see it on our presentation? Organisms within a population must compete for resources to survive. So it seems like we have a consensus that this is, in fact, what do you think, Dylan? True or false? Okay. Does anyone want to venture? A guess? Does anyone want to be brave and say what it is in the chat? It's true. Why do you say it's true, Emma? You're right, it's true. But why is Emma saying it's true? Right, animals find resources to survive. And if there's not enough resources, well, then they're going to be fighting for them. There's limited resources in one area. Exactly. Think of it this way. You probably live in a house or an apartment with your family members, correct? Do you sometimes compete with the food at the dinner table? I mean, sorry, not compete with food, but do you compete for food at the dinner table? Or do you compete for bathroom time or hot water in the shower? Or do you compete for who gets to control the TV? Well, the same is true for animals, except for when animals are competing for food and water and shelter, without those things, they'll die. So some organisms, we learned yesterday that some organisms are more fit. So let's look at these this next question. Organisms with advantageous physical characteristics, advantages, are most likely to survive. So which organisms are the most likely to survive? Is it the ones with physical advantages? Thumbs up for true. Thumbs down for, okay, yes, yes. Yes, that's right. If you have an advantageous physical characteristic, then you're going to be more likely to survive. For instance, if you have an Arctic fox, let's say you have two Arctic foxes, they live up in the Arctic in a lab in Alaska, where it's pretty snowy most of the year. The background's white. Which fox is going to have a physical advantage? A brown fox or a white fox? The white ones. Exactly, because it can do what? It can hide. It can blend into the background. It's camouflaged. And so it's more likely to be able to hide from predators and hide from its prey. So it'll be able to sneak up on its prey a lot easier. All right. So organisms in a population must compete. Some organisms have different traits. And the organisms that have advantageous physical traits are more likely to survive. Over time, inheritance of beneficial variations can change the entire population. True or false? Inheritance, remember that's talking about reproduction. So over time, over hundreds of years, or thousands of years, will the inheritance of beneficial variations change the entire population? If you're having difficulty, break it down. Okay, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people gave me feedback. That is just over a third of you guys. Just over a third of you have given me feedback. What do you think? Don't be afraid. Commit. Whether you're wrong or right, that's fine, because we're all going to learn the answer. Shamon Dem? I don't know what that is, Michael. Okay, well, the keyword right there is beneficial variations, okay? Beneficial means that there is some advantage to that variation. And if there's an advantage to a variation, when the organisms are competing and one has an advantage and the other one doesn't, the one with the advantage is going to survive longer, or it's more likely to survive. And because it can survive, it can pass on its physical characteristics. So if you have that population of foxes and half the population is brown and half the population is white, and the white ones have that advantageous adaptation, they can hide from their prey and sneak up on them and eat them. Which ones are going to be the ones that are better at surviving? The white foxes or the brown foxes? The white ones. And so when the white ones reproduce, are they going to make brown babies or white babies? Exactly, they're going to make white babies. That beneficial variation is going to change the population. So after one generation, we're going to have significantly more white foxes. After 2 generations, we're going to have a lot more. And that keeps happening. So over time, the entire population changes. The allele frequency that causes that white phenotype, that white fur, is getting distributed throughout the population. So we see that directional selection occurring there. Direction, it goes in one direction. In this case, it's towards the white fur. All right, all organisms in a population are equally equipped for survival. True or false? All organisms are equal. True or false? You're right, it's false. Awesome, guys. Because of what? Because there is variation, right? We've talked about that a lot today. Variation occurs because of sexual reproduction. I don't know who studied meiosis, but meiosis is how it's how your body creates sex cells. Meiosis. It's how your body creates sex cells. And in doing so, what it does is it takes your pairs of chromosomes, it essentially cuts them up, rips them apart, and distributes the little pieces randomly into essentially 4 different cells, okay? So each one of those cells has incredible variation between the other ones for the different traits. Not only that, but the next time a different sex cell reproduces, goes through meiosis, that creates 4 new sex cells that are completely different from these 4, because there are so many ways that the traits can organize themselves. So through meiosis and through sexual reproduction, where your sex cell, whether it's a sperm or an egg, combines with another sex cell, another sperm or an egg, that creates all the variation in the variety that we see. And if we didn't have meiosis and if we didn't have sexual reproduction, then we'd see a whole lot of what? We'd see a whole lot of the same characteristics, and we'd all be the same. We'd be, we probably would be dead, like the bananas, right? Without the genetic variation, like in the bananas yesterday, they'd all be the same, and they'd be a lot more susceptible to diseases. All right, so last thing, last one, guys. Some organisms will outcompete others. True or false? Hopefully everyone, yes, it's true. People that are awesome, yeah, it's true. Also remember, some organisms are more fit. They're going to outcompete others, and they will live longer, pass on their genes, and the population will shift in one direction or another. All right, so let's consider this Siberian husky. Very, very similar to a wolf. They're actually incredibly closely related to the wolf. They were domesticated from the wolf, just like all dogs were. But these ones kept a lot of the same features because they live in the tundra. They live in the tundra. So what's some of their adaptations for living in the tundra? Thick fur. Yep. Sharp teeth, probably for hunting. Yeah. Maybe dark skin. Keen eyesight. Is that eyesight or eyesight? Eyesight? Okay, eyesight. Let's say they're your neighbor here in Georgia walked into a pet store and said, I want one of those Siberian huskies. They're so cute. I love their ears. They're majestic. They're so fluffy and soft. And I want them to stay outside and protect my house this summer. What advice would you give your neighbor? No good. Don't do it. It's too hot here. If you do, you have to shave its fur. It's going to die. Why is that? Like a lot of you are saying that it's not good because of the abiotic factors here, right? It's too hot here. These huskies are adapted. I love that word, Alexandra. They're adapted to the cold. They're adapted to a cold biome, to a cold environment. And so they're not going to do very well here in the summer. They're meant to be in colder biomes. Awesome, guys. All right. So let's move on. We've got some new vocabulary words. We're going to go through these, and then I'll let you get to some of the vocab in our modules, okay? So this first word, if you look, there are some spaces here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces. So our word is going to have 9 letters in it. Now this word, I've got some clues here. This word is used to describe the differences in inherited traits. We talked about it a little bit. It's a noun. And if you look, we have some pictures here. There are some different physical characteristics in these rabbits. Remember, 9 letters. Not evolution, although evolution does have 9 letters. Evolution is the process. What words describes the differences? Variation, evolution, adaptation. Let's check it out. It is variation. Awesome. Good job, guys. Good job. So you're right. We have variation between these individual rabbits, right? This one's small. This one's a little bit bigger. This one's large. This rabbit is dark brown. This one's light brown. This one is reddish brown. We see a lot of variation in not only the size of these frogs, but in the pattern, shape, and color on their backs. There's a lot of variation for the physical characteristics. All right. This word is the physical difference of a variation, the physical difference of a variation. So when we're talking about a physical difference, we're talking about a phenotype, right? Nice, Maya. Does anyone agree with her? Does anyone disagree? She's trying hard. You agree? Yes? Alexander, Connor, Cody? Sorry, not Connor, Cody. Connor, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? It is, ooh, genes. I like that thought. I totally like that thought, Elijah, genes. It is, in fact, traits. Remember, genes is talking about the, the genotype. It is the genetic factor that affects the physical trait. But I know where you're going with that. It's the genetical factor that affects the physical trait. So awesome, though. I like what you're thinking. You're really close. Excuse me. So if we look at number 3, this word is used when talking about the DNA and seeing that physical feature. Seeing the physical feature, that's the trait. But the DNA would be what we're talking about, the genetics, the genes. Don't be sad. Don't be sad, Elijah. That was an awesome guess. I loved it. And it allowed me to talk more about the differences between those. I appreciate it. All right. Fill in the blanks from those vocabulary words that we just used. Go ahead, read this to yourself for a moment and see if you can fill in those blanks. Send me a personal message. Personal message. Not all members of a species are the same. Every species exhibits what? For example, some beetles are green while others are brown. Not all individuals in a population will survive to reproduce. Those that do pass on their what to their offspring. Okay. Awesome, awesome. Getting some people messaging me. Close, close. What are those vocabulary words we just used, guys? Awesome, awesome. Yes. All right, so let me go ahead and read this. Not all members of a species are the same. Every species exhibits variation, right? Every species exhibits variation, right? For instance, I don't like this example. Let's do a new one. Let's do a different one. Some stag beetles have a 2-centimeter horn, while other stag beetles have a 3-centimeter horn. Right? Remember, this example right here, it's talking about members of a species. A beetle isn't a species, right? We want to talk about a specific species, so that's why I'm using the word stag beetle. And not all individuals in a population will survive to reproduce. Those that do pass on their traits to their offspring. All right, guys. I'd like you to go ahead and work on our vocabulary module in biodiversity. Okay? I've gone ahead and I have tried to help you guys out a little bit with that today. I've gone ahead and I have put in our dates for each of these modules. So if you miss a day, you can come back here and see which one you should be doing that way. It should be a lot easier for you. I haven't finished all of them yet. I'm getting up to that right now, but go ahead and work on that right now. Today is biodiversity. It's the 27th. And go ahead and work on that vocabulary. Any questions, concerns? Give me a check mark when you are done. I'll give you about 4 minutes for that. All right, guys. Let's bring it back for a second. How do you guys do? I don't see any check marks except for Michael, so that means you're all still working, right? All right, as long as you have submitted all your assignments, don't worry about whether or not they've been graded or not, okay? Just make sure that you have submitted your assignment, okay? All right, so we're gonna go on. I see some of you have questions. I'm gonna go ahead and answer those in a little bit, but I'd like to get us back to biodiversity. So what is biodiversity? Well, let's break that word apart. Bio means life, diversity means what? Means differences. Awesome, awesome. So biodiversity is it's a difference in life. It's all of the life here in the biosphere. It's all the differences in organisms, and in between organisms, it's the differences in their genetic code. And not only that, but the ecosystems that they're found in. So biodiversity is really important. Without it, we wouldn't have the wide range of animals and climates and biomes that we have right now. And it'd be kind of this boring, mono culture. It wouldn't be a biosphere, it'd be a monosphere. Everything would be the same. Without these differences to make life diverse, it wouldn't be interesting. Think about the bananas. The bananas from yesterday, they're going extinct because they have very little genetic biodiversity. They're more susceptible to diseases. Without biodiversity, species, populations are going to become weaker and they'll be more apt to die off. All right, so we have genetic diversity, which is differences in the genes, right? You look different from your brother than your sister, from your brother and your sister. You have different hair than I do. You have different hair color. You have different hair length. You have different hair texture. You have different color eyes than I do. And those are just two things. Genetic diversity is incredibly vast. That's why mapping out DNA took so long to do, even with computers. All right, ecosystem diversity, the number of different habitats in an ecosystem. Species diversity, how many different types of species there are in an area. For instance, in my backyard, there's probably a good 20, 30, 40 different species of beetles back there. Not to mention the incredible diversity that the soil has. And then we have regional diversity, varieties in landscapes in an area. For instance, there's a mountain. Mountain is the area. There's lots of different landscapes within that mountain. You have the lower slopes, there's lots of trees, the slope's pretty shallow, so it's not very steep. Then you work your way up the mountain, it starts getting more steep, there's less trees, and then you get to the very top. Above the tree line, a lot of rock, small shrubs, not very many trees, maybe some snow, and we have this variety of landscape all within that mountain. So we have regional diversity. All right, moving on. I want to talk to you a little bit about ecosystem diversity and the two kind of main factors that drive ecosystem diversity, which are migration and evolution. Now, what is migration? Who can tell me what that is? Think about migration of animals that you might have heard of, moving from somewhere to somewhere else. Geese, awesome, yeah. Geese migrate from where to where? The Canada geese. Where do Canada geese migrate from? Or to? They migrate south during what time of the year? Why do they migrate south in the winter? Because it's cold? Because it's warmer down south? Okay. Those are some good guesses. How does being warmer help the geese? I mean, think about the geese. They swim in pretty cold water, right? Oh, Jason. Awesome. Food. Now, why food, Jason? How does warmer temperatures affect food? In the winter, there's a lot less food production up north because there's less sunlight throughout the day, and there's a lot less photosynthesizing occurring. So plants aren't making a lot of food. Plants aren't growing a lot, so there's going to be less food in an ecosystem in the north. In the south, there's not a lot of variation in temperature and, more importantly, sunlight. And so there's a lot more photosynthesis occurring in southern areas, and so there's going to be a lot more food for the geese. And so when animals migrate, they're typically migrating because of a food supply or a water supply. But over longer periods of time, animals might migrate because of a changing climate. For instance, we have climate change occurring right now. And what's happening to the polar bear's home? All the ice in the Arctic is melting. So what's going to happen to their home when the climate gets warmer? Well, their home is going to go bye-bye. They hunt on ice. They sneak up on seals that are coming up through the ice to breathe. They hang out at these holes. And without the ice to sit on, they're not going to be able to catch their food. They're not going to be able to eat. They're going to have to either migrate, evolve, or die. We could talk about reproductive patterns as well, but sometimes there aren't enough mates to go around, right? Sometimes the competition for mating is pretty intense. Like deers, they fight for females. Same thing with lions, they fight for females. And if you are the loser, you might have to migrate, go somewhere else to try and perform your biological functions to be able to mate and pass on your genes. It looks like my screen is frozen. I'm going to refresh my connection to see if you guys are typing. Okay. All right, I see you guys now. Well, my chat's kind of messed up. That's fine. We'll move on. So, evolution. when polar bears lose their home, we have some different abiotic factors that are changing. And they're changing at an incredible rate. When you have climates changing really fast, that puts a lot of new pressure on the organisms that live in that environment. And what you see is extinctions or pretty quick evolution, right? If there is some trait that is beneficial, then those species that have that beneficial trait are going to live, and they'll be able to pass on their genes. And so it's when you have things like climate change occurring quickly, we're going to see a lot of evolution occurring fast. Sometimes we might see evolution occurring a little bit slowly. For instance, you have one population and they become separated. Like one group goes and lives on one side of the mountain range while the other group goes and migrates to another side of the mountain range. And because there are different biotic and abiotic factors on each of those sides, there's different pressures, right? When we talked about Darwin's finches yesterday, the finches were separated on different islands and they had different food sources there. So one population of finches, they all came from the same population, but when they got separated, one population adapted to have a beak that was better for eating seeds. What was that adaptation? It was a stronger, chat's dead. It was a stronger beak, a bigger, fatter beak. And then the other population, they had a thinner beak to get, to be able to dig inside of tree bark and pull out those little bugs in there. All right, there we go. The chats isn't really working very well, but I can kind of see it if I refresh it. All right. And so that's what evolution is. It causes that ecosystem diversity. And evolution can take place over a short amount of time, and we see different traits arising. But if you have the same populations of birds on those islands in the Galapagos, if there is a new environmental factor, like let's say there's an introduction of a cat into those islands. Cats are pretty bad for islands. They wreak havoc on the bird populations there. If you have a cat introduced to that island, a new predator, then the organisms, the birds that are more adept at hiding through camouflage, through coloration, through a variation in their feather coloration, if they're able to hide better, then that color variation is going to it's going to be the one that gets passed on, and the population will eventually shift in that direction. We'll have that directional evolution. And then let's say there is some sort of genetic mutation that changes where the birds lay eggs, right? If the birds were laying eggs in trees, but the cats could climb the trees, but then like a couple birds decided to lay their eggs on a cliffside where the cats can't get to, well, those birds are going to start, the population is going to have birds that lay eggs on that cliffside, and there's going to be less birds in the population that are laying their eggs in the tree. And so over time, when you have a lot of different stresses on a population, and when those stresses change, we actually see what's called macroevolution, where we have speciation occurring, where we have new species being formed, while other species might go extinct. Any questions? That makes sense, guys? The chat's kind of failing right now. It makes sense? All right, any questions on that? No? Okay. All right, so we just have one more question for you today. In biodiversity, in terms of biodiversity, what is the killer bee in America? Is it ecological biodiversity? Is it regional diversity? Is it genetic diversity? Is it species diversity? I I want you to come back tomorrow with this answer, and you will find it by going through the videos on our instruction module. Okay? All right, class, have a great day. I've got to run, but I'll be right back. So if you have any questions, a killer bee, great question. Watch the video. It's actually a combination. That's not a hard. It's actually a combination of species, of two different species of bees. I believe it's the African wild bee, and the European honeybee, or maybe it's the American honeybee. All right, guys, have a great day. Check it out. I will see you all tomorrow. Actually, no, I won't. I'll see you all Thursday. Bye, guys.